Hey there. It's cold, so I'll keep this brief for a couple of reasons. I'm David, by the way, and I'm here to talk about Dave's Picks Volume 5, which you're probably aware of, and if you're not, apologies for not letting you know sooner. But here to talk about Dave's Picks Volume 5, and again, this is something we announced quite some time ago, but now that it's available on its own, we thought we'd just do a video that's just about Dave's Picks Volume 5, which of course is from November 17th, 1973 at UCLA in Los Angeles. An absolutely phenomenal stunner of a show. One of these shows, and I've said this before, but I kind of feel like I have to apologize for not having released this one sooner. It's that good a show. It's one of these shows that every time I've heard over the years, over the last couple of decades really, but since I've been working with the band, I've wondered, wow, why hasn't this been released yet? We got to put this one out, and then something comes up and we don't do it. Really, there's no issues. There's nothing. The sound is phenomenal. The performance is outstanding. The song list is great, and the era is, one of the most loved. So no excuses. But anyhow, it's finally out. So November '73, as we've said many times, and I think a lot of people would agree that it's one of the best eras for the Grateful Dead, and it certainly is up there with Europe '72, fall of '72, spring of '77, and fall of '73 is another one of those ones when you talk about the best eras of Grateful Dead music. And here they were, not necessarily doing a tour through November, but doing some, I don't want to call them strategic shows, but they had a lot of space between shows, and they played extremely well at every show. So they opened up they ended their October tour actually on November 1st. Then they did the 3 nights in San Francisco, Winterland, great box set there, and then took a couple of nights off, did 1 night in San Diego, took another 3 nights off, and I don't think it took 3 days to travel from San Diego to LA. And then here they find themselves on November 17th, a Saturday night in Los Angeles, and that means something. You follow the kind of the Dead's trajectory in their career and their shows, and generally when it was a Saturday night in New York or a Saturday night in Los Angeles, they played pretty darn well. Kind of that energy of a Saturday LA crowd really kind of pumped them up as well. So you've got the band playing incredibly well. Wake of the Flood had just come out in the middle of October 15th, so it had been out just about a month, so they had all that new material that now everybody knew, not just people who've been going to shows, but people who now bought the record. They knew Eyes of the World and songs like that, Stella Blue, songs that are on this release, Road Jimmy. And so they come into LA and they play a big venue. They played, this is the Pauley Pavilion, the basketball arena for UCLA. We'll get to that in a minute. Great story there. And then they show up on a Saturday night, and it was a huge crowd. I don't know if it was sold out, but it was, it was in excess of 10,000 people, which is, big for the Dead in '73. So here they are, Saturday night, Los Angeles. Big brand new album has just come out, and here they are now. Oh, there's a dog running around. We might get a visit from a dog, and a bunch of ducks flying by. And so here they are in Los Angeles on a Saturday, and they come out blazing. They open the show with Me and My Uncle, and it's a powerful, one of those Me and My Uncles, one of those songs that opens up a show that you just know that it's going to be a hot night. They're playing incredibly well. The sound is incredibly good. So you know it's going to be good. So they open up with this Me and My Uncle. Then they kick into Here Comes Sunshine, second song of the night. Usually Here Comes Sunshine, when it was played in '73, which wasn't all that often, would be played generally later in the first set or even the second set, because you got to get warmed up when you play something like that. Well, this was such a good night, they were already plenty warmed up. And this, I've said this many times before, and I think anyone who's heard this will agree, certainly a top 3, Here Comes Sunshine, possibly even a top 2. Tough to nudge out the one from 12/19/73, Dick's Picks Volume 1, of course. Tough to nudge that out of the best versions of Here Comes Sunshine ever. But this one is a close second, certainly, like I say, a top 3. I'm a big fan of Here Comes Sunshine, and this one is just awesome. One of these ones that makes you just kind of stand up and say, wow, that was really good. First set continues with kind of typical stuff from '73, which is to say, there's a great The Race Is On. There's a terrific China Rider, which is kind of what you'd expect a mid-late first set in '73. Great version of China Rider, really expansive China Cat that heads towards Rider. And then a Round and Around to end the first set. Now oftentimes in this tour, this era, 73, they would end the first set with playing in the band. And this one they ended it with a rocking version of Around and Around. And I'm always amazed at these 1971, 72, 73 versions of Around and Around that Bobby had anything left to sing in the second set, because he literally, well, not literally, but figuratively screams his lungs out. Literally, that would be nasty. Figuratively screams his lungs out on these versions of Around and Around. So they end the first set with this kicker. Great first set, somewhat short, which is to say it's about 80 minutes long. It fits on one CD. And the second disc, which is where the second set starts. Second set starts just as the first set started, somewhat unconventionally with Me and My Uncle. Begins with Row Jimmy. Not necessarily a very common, they did it a few times in 73, but great, beautiful Row Jimmy. It's great Jack Straw in here, and then Brown Eyed Women, and then there's also Ramble on Rose, and then in the big second set, Jam. And as I mentioned, in 1973, they often ended the first set with playing in the band. In this one, they instead do it as the big second set, Jam. And about a week before at Winterland, they'd done a jam sequence of playing in the band, Uncle John's band, Morning Dew, back into Uncle John's band, back into playing in the band. We call it the playing in the band. We call it the Palindrome or the sandwich. And they did it 3 times. They did it Winterland on November 10th. They did it this one, and they did it on March 23rd, 74, the Cow Palace show, which was the Wall of Sound debut, really. And this one, in my opinion, and I think that of many others, is the best one. And interestingly, we have released the other 2. Dick's Picks 24 was the Cow Palace, and then the Winterland was part of that box set. And every time we've released one of those other 2, people have said, oh, this is great, but man, the one from UCLA, the one they're missing, is even better. And it is. I totally agree. The other ones are great too, but this one sounds like it's with purpose and with inspiration, and they're completely engaged with what they're doing. So playing in the band, awesome playing in the band jam. The Uncle John's band is outstanding as well. Morning Dew, one of the best. Really one of these perfect versions of Morning Dew that slips really seamlessly back into Uncle John's band. It's one of these transitions you have to hear to believe. Uncle John's goes back into playing in the band with a nice jam going into it. It's not like they kick right back into the reprise. They jam it out a bit. And then you think, okay, well, what do they have left? They have a lot left. They've got a Stella Blue and a Big River, and then kind of a big sequence to end the show of Eyes of the World into Sugar Mag and Eyes of the World in 73. It was good, and this is one of the best. This is an Eyes of the World that's just really up and peppy, and then the jam at the end, you know, the thing they do. Some people call it the 7, whatever they call it. That thing they do at the end of Eyes of the World, this is outstanding. Really worth it. And then an encore of Casey Jones. A good way to send home the LA crowd on a Saturday night with a rockin' hit, if you want to call it a hit, from Working Man's Dead. An incredibly satisfying show to listen to, start to finish, many times. And I've been listening, I'll say this, here we are in mid-January when I'm filming this, and we've now had this one done for a couple of months, I guess a few weeks at least, and in the meantime we've now been working on Dave's Picks Volume 6, which, as you're aware, is that 1970, 1969 material, which is awesome. And I've now got on my desk these 2 albums that are completed. They haven't been they're not pressed, but they're finished master material. So I've been listening back and forth relentlessly to those 2 shows, and the UCLA show, I truly can't get enough of it. Every time I hop in the car, grab one of those, and likewise the 69, 70 stuff, can't get enough of that either. But there's something that draws me to the 73 show every time, and it's really a wonderful, wonderful show. Again, one of these shows that is so good that every time I've heard it over the last decade, I've scratched my head and said, why hasn't this thing come out? It's really that good. So now it's finally come out as Dave's Picks Volume 5, as you're aware. It was available as part of the subscriptions, and there's still a few left, which is why I'm doing this video, to let you know that there are a few left. And if you're interested, get it, because it'll sell out fast, probably faster than 1 through 4 sold out in 2012. It looks like the 2013 stuff is going to have quite a bit of demand, so check it out. It's at dead.net, of course. You're probably watching this there. I don't know where you're watching this, but you're watching it somewhere, so go to dead.net. And a couple things that I want to point out that I think make this even extra cool is we've got Tim Truman, a longtime friend of the band, Grateful Dead comics that have been in the Almanac all those years, plenty of other artwork, and he's doing the artwork for Volume 5, and we're very excited about it. It's great cover art, skeleton playing a guitar to a bear, UCLA Bruins, the bear, the basketball, and so the artwork is outstanding. It's certainly up there with 1 through 4, and the quality we had on Volume 1, 2, 3, and 4 is certainly continued with Volume 5 and hopefully onward. So the artwork is magnificent. Very, very happy with that. And the other thing I want to point out is you're probably all aware of who Bill Walton is. You know, he's a good friend of ours, and huge Deadhead, of course. And as it happened, he was at this UCLA show. He was in his final year, his senior year at UCLA on the basketball team, and this was the basketball team's home court. So this was like the basketball team coming to his house, and he'd been there for 4 years, and this is, like I say, this is his last year. And we've got Bill for the first time ever to write the liner notes for this. So we've got Bill Walton writing liner notes about a show he was at a venue that meant a heck of a lot to him from 40 years ago, from just about 40 years ago. And I'll tell you, if you've ever heard Bill Walton talk in person, if you've met him, if you've had a conversation with him, if you've seen him talk on TV when he does NBA basketball commentary, he's really funny. He's an incredibly witty guy, and he's really interesting. He's really engaging. He's very charismatic, and he writes the way he talks, which means while you're reading his notes, and if you, like I say, if you know anything about Bill, you can't help but read them in that voice. And it's a real trip to do, because the stories he tells, only he could tell them. Because he tells stories, of course, about the show, he was there, but it's more about the time, what it was like being at UCLA, and then the band comes to your arena, and literally to his arena. You know, he was a star, the star of the team, I guess. And for him to then be able to tell these stories and what this show meant, and kind of put it into context of what was going on in America in November '73, and there was a lot. But you have to read the notes to hear. But again, I've read the notes a dozen times or more, and I can't help but reading them in Bill's voice, and as best as I can do, because he's got a very distinct manner about himself, and it makes him one of the most interesting people I've ever met. And again, he writes that way, and they're just, these notes are a trip. You know, I hope we do another show that Bill attended, because it would be great to have him write again for us, because it's just, you know, thank you, Bill. If you happen to watch this, it really meant a lot for us to have you contribute to this Dave's Picks Volume 5. It's a really good one. And the show is outstanding. So you had the show. Kid Candelario, I've also got to say, he recorded this, and Kid's recordings are some of the best, 73, 74. And this one is a beautiful full sound, big arena, so it had the full sound. It's really, Kid, you did yourself. This is a good one. And they all are, but this one sounds magnificent. This one's got big full sound, Jeffrey Norman mastered HD CD. So anyhow, go to dead.net, check it out. There's not a lot left, and don't miss out, because it is a good show, and the overall package and presentation, thanks to Bill, thanks to Tim, thanks to Jeffrey, thanks to everything, is really a fun one. Certainly one I want on my shelf. So anyhow, thanks for joining us. And you know what? It's a beautiful day, so I'm going to pan the camera by the water, if you don't mind, before I shut it down. I said I'd do this once before, and I forgot when I got around, so I'm going to do that now. So thanks for joining us.